tonight then. I'd like to welcome Didier Ghez. He's come all the way from Paris to give us a talk on Pinocchio, and if you give a big round of applause because he's waited a long time to do his full stint.
Well, hello, good evening. I will try not to bore you too much. I know you are all very tired and, well, try to deliver, I hope it will be an entertaining speech. And I hope you will excuse me for my English, which isn't always very perfect, and that tonight is even less perfect than ever, because I'm quite tired. So, well, I heard someone telling me that you will have to work my nose to know if what I'm saying is true or not. I don't know what that means, but well, you may try. So I wanted to present you, in a way, how Pinocchio came to life and what was who were the artists who were behind Pinocchio, and what was the type of art that came into being to make this movie that we today know as the best Disney movie of all time, at least in terms of animation and quality of background and quality of the art itself. And for that, I have been helped by a friend in Paris who is now making the definite art book on Pinocchio that will be published in October, which is a huge 250 pages art book about the subject that contains the art that I will show you this evening. And if we can start right away, that would be the best introduction. Well, so here is the main title of. I don't know if I will be able to watch my notes like that, but I will try to do without my notes then. So this is the main title of this movie. I'm going to tell you a lot about this evening. And it all started not with a mouse actually, but with an Italian writer named Paolo Collodi, known by friends like Carlo Lorenzini, in fact. And it started in 1871 in Italy with a very, very long series called Pinocchio that was published in I Giornali dei Bambini in Italy from 1871 till 1873. And that was written by a person who was crawling paid for each page he was publishing. And so that explains in a way why this series came to be extremely long, and if you read it today, a little bit boring to say the least. We can go to the next slide. Well, maybe we go 2 steps further than after this. No, next slide, please. Well, so Disney, having read this book, thought it was quite an interesting book, after all, to do an animated feature. And so he started thinking about it quite early in the 30s. And when 1937 came, and Snow White was being released, he thought, well, that may be the time to start working on Pinocchio. At that point, you had 2 artists that really influenced the style of the movie. As you know, in all the big Disney movies, you have some artists that come before the movies come into actual production to make sketches that are actually inspirational sketches that will set the mood for the whole movie after that. For Sleeping Beauty, as Brian and Rachel told you a moment before, it was Ivan Girl who set the complete mood for the movie. For Alice in Wonderland, it was a person called Mary Blair who did the same thing. And for Pinocchio, there were two people who were actually very instrumental in that. One is called Gustav Tengren, and you can see here one of his inspirational paintings. And well, this one isn't very significant of the kind of paintings he did. Gives you an idea of the mood he's trying to set, which is quite not a very joyful mood, as you can see, a little bit gloomy, and most of his other paintings are quite as gloomy as this one is, and especially the colors are very full colors, very warm colors, and it sets the mood for the whole Pinocchio movie. Gustav Tengren came to the studio, I think it was in 1936, if I'm right, and since I can look at my notes, I don't know if I'm right or not. He came just before the release of Snow White. He's actually the one who designed the original poster of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. We can send the slide, please. The actual slide. Next one, please. Next one, please. Okay, so that's Albert Herder, about whom I will talk a little bit later. But just Tengren should be the next slide or the one after that. So that's still the next slide. Now here is Gustav Tengren, and here is this Swedish artist who came to work for the Disney studio around 1936, and who was influenced by the atmosphere of the village he was born in Sweden, a village called Magra, and his father was a painter, design painter, and Gustav Tengren was very influenced also by his grandfather, Ken, who was a wood carver, and he gave this feel of warm wood, very cozy atmosphere that you see, especially at the beginning of Pinocchio in the workshop of Quebec. The other person who was very instrumental in the creation of Pinocchio is actually Albert Herder. And Albert Herder, whom you have seen just before, the person who was sitting in the chair here, actually also created with Tengren the kind of mood that you can see in Pinocchio. He designed, he made the original design for most of the characters that then later evolved a lot, and he made a lot of inspirational sketches that he always did for the artists to have ideas of how to design their for example, Pinocchio. He did some very early sketches of Pinocchio, the actual character, and as he had done for Snow White, for example, if we can have the next slide, please. Had done the same thing for Snow White. Here is some early sketches for Snow White. And, well, Albert Herder gave a lot of inspiration to people working at the studio at that time. He was known as someone who could draw very fast, like doing 100 to 200 to 400 drawings a day, and somehow also a little bit blunt. Was not always very gentle with people, and not always preserving their feelings. Like some of his trainees would come to him and tell him, well, master, don't spare my feelings, tell me what those drawings are worth, and or what is wrong with those drawings. And he would say, well, actually, everything is wrong with those drawings. Nothing is right. So that was the character, and that was one of the two persons who came very early in the creation of Pinocchio. Then a third person that created the actual visual mood in the movie was Claude Coast. And if we can have the next slide, please. I'll show you this is a Claude Coast. And this is one of his most beautiful backgrounds from Pinocchio. And the little toys, the little clock that are here in the background were actually designed by Albert Herder. You get a lot of ideas for all those small things that are found into Pinocchio that give the spirit of the movie, and that makes you think as if you are in a real workshop. And actually, those clocks that were designed by Albert Herder gave rise to a very funny anecdote. Since Walt Disney seen those, Walt said to his animators, "Well, I'm sure that you won't be able to quote his precise terms." He told them, well, the first time Walt saw the sequence, he commented to his animators for their, well, I will tell you the story without the precise terms of Walt Disney because I can't read it. It's actually, Walt Disney told his animators, well, those backgrounds are wonderful. They're wonderful for a fairy tale workshop. And those could never be done in reality. So they are beautiful and beautifully made and very imaginative, but well, it could never exist, and that's too sad. And well, some of the animators took that actually as a challenge because they knew Walt, and they knew that if he told them that, it would mean that Walt Disney had something behind his mind. And so they started studying those props. And they worked on that, and those who were the most talented, like Claude Coast, who was a very good craftsman also, and other people like Ollie Johnston and Frank Tomart and people like that, started to work on those clocks, and they actually built one of those clocks. And that was one of the most precise work that could be done. When Walt saw that, he said, well, I knew you would do that. I just wondered how long it would take you to do it. So they were a little bit frustrated, but happy too. Can I have the next slide, please? So well, that is one of the other Claude Coast painting, and it's probably one of those clocks that they created. Can I have the next slide, please? And that's another one. So after that, we'll come to the characters themselves, and those characters evolved a lot, and I won't talk too much about the evolution of all the characters, just about the most important ones. And so, well, this is a storyboard drawing. It's still empty. It's a very nice background, or a very nice idea for a background. It's still empty, and still nice the characters. Can I have the next one? Here is the completed version of the background that still lacks a little bit of life. And actually it was very, can I have the next slide please? It was actually very difficult to design the main character, especially Pinocchio. Pinocchio was very tough one. Because at the same time he had to look like a puppet, and to be very like rigid, and people had to know that he wasn't a real boy, because otherwise the whole point of the story would be lost. But at the same time, he had to have some human characteristics that would allow people to sympathize for him, and to feel some warm feelings towards him. And so at first, Pinocchio was too stiff and too much like the original drawings that were meant to illustrate the colonial version of Pinocchio. And those original drawings were done by Albert Hercules. Then Freddie Moore, who is very well known, especially for having animated a lot of Mickey shorts and some of the most beautiful ones, and who had a who also animated a lot of the dwarfs in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and had a very good talent to give some appeal to the characters. And he came into working onto Pinocchio, the character, and this is what he gave. He gave this very round, very soft Pinocchio. But Walt thought that he was too childlike and a little bit not enough puppet-like. So then came another fantastic artist whose name is Emil Cole, who then worked to name a few of his later characters, especially on Shere Khan and on Prince Philip, and who is known for being the finest draftsman at the studio. Some were the finest animators, but he was the finest draftsman. He was also very talented animator, but he had this gift for tracing very precise lines and for getting very precise feel of his character. Can I have the next slide, please? And so he came into action, and Pinocchio came to life, actually known him today. Well, this is one of the other lovely characters that we have, non-talking character, Theo, and unfortunately on that one I don't remember who was the lead animator. Do I have the next slide, please? And here is Jimmy. Well, Jimmy was the turning point of the creation of Pinocchio. In the original Glowy version, Jimmy lasts only a few minutes. He is actually slammed by a big hammer and just dies like that. So that's the end of that. Well, in Pinocchio, if that had been the case, we probably wouldn't have the masterpiece we have today. Actually, after 6 months of animation on Pinocchio, Walt threw away all that he had. He knew if he carried on working on the movie he had started at that time in 1937, it would be a big flop. It wouldn't work, the story didn't work, and nothing would. So he just threw away this animation that people had worked on for 6 months and thought about finding another idea. And the other idea came with Jiminy Cricket. Jiminy Cricket was a turning point. By introducing Jiminy Cricket into the story, he could make the story fit together and have the movie that we have today. And I'm now letting Ward Kimball, who was one of the leading animators on Jiminy Cricket and one of the 9 old men, tell you about the creation of Jiminy Cricket. It will just last for a couple of seconds. This is not Ward Kimball. That's okay. So Jiminy Cricket came to life, and what a lovely character he was. Actually, the voice of Jimmy Cricket was also very important in setting the personality of this character. The voice is actually Cliff Edwards, who was known at that time as Ukulele Ike, and who was a singer and an entertainer on radio. Next slide, please. And he actually gave a lot of his personality to Jiminy Cricket. Actually, another person who played ukulele at that time was the voice for Pinocchio himself, Dick
Jones.
Yes, thank you, Dick Jones. So Dick Jones also was famous for having played lots of ukulele and for playing also in Western movies at that time. Looks as if a lot of artists at Disney worked in Western movies. If Sam Kim knows what I mean. But he will tell you more about that in a moment. And so Jenny Cricket had a lot to gain from the voice of Cricket. Can I have the next slide, please? So that's again a very nice setup, very nice background and tell from Jenny Cricket. And that is one of the most beautiful backgrounds probably in the movie. Actually, in some of the sequences that surround that scene, there is a tremendous use of the multiplane camera, and the multiplane camera, as you know, this camera that allows you to have a number of cells filmed at the same time to give them some more depth than you would have by just putting a cell onto a background. That was designed for the old mill. I think it was in 1937, if I'm not wrong. So it was used quite a bit in Pinocchio. And that led to costs escalating quite a bit, and to the point that Walt Disney had to say, well, now we have to stop using it because it's really costing too much. There was one sequence at the very beginning of Pinocchio that I will show you in a couple of seconds that actually had quite some use of that multiplane camera, and that costed, and at that time it was quite a bit. It costed from around $25,000 to $40,000, which was a sum that was extraordinary at that time. So that's a very brief sequence. It's just amazing that it costed so much to do it. It's a beautiful sequence too, but this is where we use the multiplane camera.
As I wandered along the crooked streets, there wasn't a soul to be seen. The only sign of life was a lighted window in the shop of a woodcarver named
And that's it. That's the scene that costed so much. Okay. Could I have the next slide, please? Okay, some of the other characters that gave fantastic atmosphere to Pinocchio were those three villains, plus Stromboli, of course. We'll talk a little bit more about Stromboli later on. But well, I would like to tell you an anecdote about Gideon. That is probably one of the funniest anecdotes on the making of that movie. You may be familiar with a person called Mel Blanc, who, if you have seen some Warner Bros. Cartoons, and actually you may have seen any Warner Bros. Cartoon, and in any of those you will see voice Mel Blanc. He basically did most of the Warner Bros. Cartoons voices, like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Willy Coyote, and so on and so on. He actually hated crowds, and he had to jump a lot to do the Bugs Bunny voice. But you're probably wondering what all that has to do with this Disney movie. Well, actually, it so happens that Mel Blanc did the voice of Gideon. Well, those of you who knows very well Pinocchio can wonder how that can be, because actually Gideon is mute for the whole movie. Well, actually, what happens is that Mel Blanc recorded the whole voice of the character who was at that time supposed to be a talking character, but also a character that would be drunk most of the time. And Walt Disney thought that it wouldn't be that nice to see a character talking and being drunk all the time, and he thought, well, that could be a little bit offensive. So just suppressed the whole dialogue, except for one hiccup. And Mel Blanc, who had recorded the whole voice, had also recorded the hiccup. So he actually did the voice of Gideon for that hiccup. He was actually paid $500, which was a lot at that time, just for one hiccup. Wow. So that is Gideon. Well, another interesting character is Fulfillo, and another one is the Postman. Well, I won't talk too much about those. I could say a lot of things about their voices and their animators, but I prefer to just, since we don't have a lot of time, and I know that you all wish upon a star that you could be in the dining room, so I would just try to rush a little bit and tell you the most interesting anecdotes about the making of that movie. Well, one anecdote I want to tell you is about Stromboli. Stromboli is probably one of the most interesting villains in the history of the Disney movies, and he is like that for one precise reason, that he was animated by one of the greatest, if not the greatest animator of all time, whose name is Vladimir Tygla, known better as Bill Tygla. Bill Tygla is the person who animated Grumpy in Snow White, or animated a few scenes of Grumpy in Snow White, and who is most famous for having animated Chernobog, the most frightening and most touching of probably of all Disney characters in his own way. And he had this sense for giving characters power and at the same time emotion, and was widely respected for that. And in Stromboli, he did one of his most fantastic jobs. And here we have not one of the most beautiful Stromboli that you can see in the movie, but still a nice one. And so Bill Tygla did a fantastic job on Stromboli. And actually, he did that good job, and everybody at the studio thought, well, that is amazing, that nobody could do better than Bill Tygla on Stromboli. And actually, Walt Disney, when he saw that, well, didn't really agree with everybody else. Actually, here is how Bill Tygla is recalling the story. Well, I gave it everything I had. The other animators all said great, or nothing else needed. Finally, came time for Walt to see it. He was subdued and said, "That was a hell of a scene, but there's always that little cruel but in there." If anyone else had animated it, I would have passed it, but I expected something else from Bill. Well, in fact, the tip, he sank a ship with that remark. It took a couple of weeks before I could work again, was crushed. But one day I took up my pencil and started to draw again, differently. It was as if something hit me, and I started all over again. This time I showed it to Walt. He said, "Great, just what I was expecting." It never did explain what was wrong. It was as if by some magical way you should know. So well, that gives you some insight about Bill Pipeline's personality as well as Walt, and that is quite interesting, I think. That can explain also how he threw away 6 months of work and just forgave him. So can I have the next slide, please? Well, that is also one of the nice sequences of the movie. And actually one scene that was originally planned for that movie was cut at the last moment. Little bit as the soup sequence was cut in Snow White, and that's one of the reasons, by the way, why Walt Kimball was handed out Jiminy Cricket to animate. Because actually Walt Kimball and Snow White had animated this soup sequence, and this very funny, absolutely beautiful soup sequence. And I don't know if you realize how much work it takes to animate the whole sequence, like 6 months, a year to animate the whole sequence. And Walt just cut it before it came to the in campaign, because he thought, well, that will slow down the action in Snow White. Well, Walt almost left the studio at that time. What a great animator we would have lost if hadn't done that. But and that is one of the reasons why he was giving the lead on Jimmy. But that was something else. In that sequence, actually, it was planned that at the end of the sequence, we'll see footage of all the lands dancing, like from Poland, from France, and from other countries. At the end, it was supposed to be a grand finale with Ubungi puppets dancing. And actually, the grand finale was cut because the other Ubungi puppets were a little bit too caricatural, and that was, even if at that time there wasn't any notion of politically correctness, they were thought to be quite offensive, and rightly so, to be honest. They were very... Okay, can I have the next slide, please? Well, that is not one of the best art has in this series, but that was one, just to give you an idea of what a rough drawing was and how it came to being cleanup. Had no cleanup just right after that, but we'll see some cleanups along the presentation. So I have the next slide, please. By the way, the drawing that you saw just before is taken from very, very complex scene, which is the cage scene, in which the multiplying camera again was used quite a bit. And that scene was extremely complex because actually it had this moving cage, and it had actually the back of the cage was moving. The front of the cage, which is another cell, was also moving. You had Pinocchio moving on his own inside the cage. Then you had the light coming onto the cage, which had a movement of its own. And so that made animators crazy for a long time, till they thought, well, maybe we shouldn't do all that work just trying to figure out how it works. Remember that they didn't have any computers at that time, so it makes the work in that time of seem much easier today. But at that time they didn't have the computers, so what they did is actually they used a process called rotoscope, in which they photographed the actual cage, and then they traced on that cage. While with some human beings, the rotoscope process doesn't work very well, or it can be seen that it is rotoscoped and doesn't look very natural all the time with a non-animated object like a cage. It's much nicer, and it's much easier for people, especially. And the character model department was a model shop was really involved in building that cage, and they actually started in this maquette type of process to give animators a sense of relief, or 3D at that time on Pinocchio. They hadn't done that on Snow White, and a person called Joe Grant thought that that could be a good idea for people, and he created those maquettes that you had seen at the beginning with Pinocchio pointing his finger and things like that, and it was quite helpful, especially with the big carriage and the horses, and to visualize them, to let the camera come around the carriage. It was very, very useful. So I had the next slide, please. That was a big innovation at that time. That's taken from the Red Lobster scene. Have nothing much to say about it. I just thought it was a very beautiful background. Have the next one. Thank you. And that's just very funny slide. And actually, we probably won't see Lempuik in that presentation, because I don't have any art from Lempuik, the friend of Pinocchio in the Pleasure Island sequence. But Lempuik is said to have been a caricature of Freddie Moore. Is it Freddie Moore or Roman? That's right. He has said to be a caricature of Freddie Moore, who I chose to elucidate about previously, who animated a lot of movies and was one of the best Disney animators. Next slide, please. That's the interior of the well, as you can see, and that's another storyboard drawing. So I just wanted to show you some background and some storyboard drawing, just to give you an idea of what was used into the creation of the film. Well, this is coming obviously from the Monster of the Well sequence, and that sequence is one of the most interesting in terms of special effects that were used. Actually, a lot of very famous people worked on that sequence. One is called Josh Medar, and worked on quite a lot of, well, most of all the next Disney features. Was actually the head of the effects department, and created some incredible effects for scenes underwater and for the sequence of Monster of the Well. He actually created this process of frosted cells that give this feeling of water when you are down water, and he created a lot of effects on Monster too. By the way, Monster was also animated a little bit by Bill Teisler, and also by Wolfgang Reitman, who then became a very famous Disney director, especially after Walt's death. One of the other people who contributed quite a bit to that sequence, a person called Oscar Fischinger, who was very well known at that time in the 30s. He came to work at the Disney studio for 3 years, from 1936 till, right? No, he came, he came to work at the studio in 1937. Actually, he was hired to work on Fantasia. He's actually responsible for most of the toccata and fugue sequence in Fantasia, and for setting the mood of that sequence. He was actually very known for his creation in terms of abstract animation, but couldn't stand the pressure on him at the studio, so left the studio in 41. So worked very briefly at the studio. Well, he also worked a lot on that sequence in Pinocchio, especially when you have all this water and all those effects with the water, those quite abstract effects. So he was quite instrumental in doing that on that monstrous sequence. Can I have the next slide, please? Well, that's just a beautiful drawing of Figaro, who was animated by Eric Larson, who is one of the 9 old men, and who later became the head of a school for new generation animators at the Disney studio, and he took care of the formation of the animators later in his life. Has animated so many characters that I just don't bother even mentioning all of them. And he animated Figaro, and there was this lovely sequence in the movie where Figaro is trying to sleep and can't sleep, and it's probably one of the most touching and one of the most beautiful, one of the softest scenes in a Disney movie that we all remember, when he's trying to sleep and cannot sleep because Geppetto is always bothering him. Yeah, understand what I mean? Lonely in French. So he's always bothering him, and he's in his bed with all those soft. This soft bed, and he looks so soft and always so beautiful, and you just would like to pet him, and you just almost about 3-dimensional, you would pet him, I'm sure. Can I have the next slide, please? And well, that will end my presentation with Pinocchio becoming human, a little bit like the beast becoming the prince. You all would wish that he has remained a puppet in a way. But still, that ends the movie with a very beautiful and very beautiful touch. Well, there are two characters still that I want to talk about before to end the speech. One is Geppetto, of course, and you can almost feel the presence of Geppetto behind Pinocchio here in that scene. And Geppetto had a voice done by a person whose name I cannot remember again right now, who was a German artist, and I will find his name in just a second, if you don't mind. I have a black hole in that name right now, but it's important because I have just a small annotation on that person. Yes. The voice of Geppetto was done by yeah, okay, that's it. So at the beginning, I know why I have this black hole, because actually it was done by 2 different people. At first it was done by Spencer Charters, and Spencer Charters was a big round man who inspired animators at first in the first concept they had for the character of Geppetto. And they did this very round character. If we can have the first slide of the series, if you don't mind, I will show you how Geppetto evolved from first. Very round, very like this Spencer Charters was supposed to do his voice. And well, it appears that the voice of Spencer Charters wasn't very good for the character. It didn't inspire that much the animators. So we changed the voice to the voice of a much softer voice done by Kristen Rudd. Here I have it. Kristen Rudd, who was a German artist and who looked much more gentle than the Spencer Charters, and who looked also a little bit more skinny, you can say, and who looks much like the Geppetto version we actually know. Well, the fact is that actually Kristen Rudd wasn't that gentle in reality. He looks very gentle, he has a very soft voice, but he was actually a Navy sympathizer, which at the time in 1940 when Pinocchio was released was not that good, and it's still not that good, but it was particularly offensive at that time. And actually, Jack Kinney, in his book, tells a story of this Christian Rob having to film a sequence on a raft for the Monstro sequence. And they were actually on a big tank of water, and they were standing on that raft, and Geppetto was, Christian Rudd was like playing the role of Geppetto, and they were shooting that for inspiration for the artist. And well, strangely enough, Christian Rudd ended in the water tank. An accident, probably. So that's it. So they were a bit messy at times. So that's it. And the other and last person or character I want to talk about before ending that joke very briefly to Anthony is the Blue Fairy. And the Blue Fairy is such a lovely character, voiced by Ellen Knoble, who did some other voices for Disney. And actually, a nice anecdote about the Blue Fairy, who was a little bit rotoscoped at times, and it shows a little bit at times. But nice anecdote is that the model for the Blue Fairy isn't, as some people claim years later, it's not the famous actress.
Jean Harlow.
Yeah, Jean Harlow, but it's not also Marilyn Monroe. That's what I wanted to say, because Marilyn Monroe at that time was probably 5 years old. Not at all Marilyn Monroe, but it's actually the person Richard mentioned, but it's also Marjorie Bell, also known as Marge Champion, also known as Marge Maybit, also known as Marge Bell, which makes a lot of names for one single person. And actually, it's also the person who posed for a lot of the Snow White live-action sequences, or live-action inspirational sequences, and she was quite used to pose to inspire artists. Well, as I previously said, I think you probably are craving for the dinner now, so I'll just end with that Blue Fairy, and hope you will make your dinner most enjoyable. Thank you.